It's the NUKA-COLA Lounge, presented by the Triple S League.
NUKA-COLA was a popular drink in the pre-war era, and still is today.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the NUKA-COLA Lounge podcast. My name is Ashenity. I'm here with Obsidian.
I am here, and you know what? For this episode, I think we might be not necessarily in a lounge. I think we might be in a cantina.
In a galaxy far, far away.
In a galaxy very,
a long
very far,
time
far
ago.
Away.
Two idiots made a podcast.
and sent this in a recording in a copy of the Millennium Falcon that crashed at the bottom of the ocean and now looks like a rock.
Oh, that's what that is. Gotcha.
Yeah, it was a rock. It was a rock at the bottom of the ocean. The thing that looked almost exactly like the Millennium Falcon. I was like, oh my goodness! You realize what this means? It means that Lucas is a historian, and he traveled here because he's actually an alien. That's what I was going to say originally. But we're gonna be talking mostly about Star Wars today because of all the Star Wars news. Happy 2017, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say, first of all, hope you all had a great Christmas and a great holiday and a great New Year. And we took a couple weeks off from the podcast, but we're back.
We were going to do one kind of like right in the middle of the whole Christmas season thing and going to parties and seeing family and relatives, but we only had like one day to get together and do it, and that was the night that Carrie Fisher went into the hospital. And so we were like, well, we were going to talk about Star Wars because we watched it, but I didn't really want to do it when she would like record it when she'd gone into the hospital, not wanting to kind of like capitalize on it, but so we wanted to give it some space, give it some time, and then unfortunately she passed away, and then so did her mother, which is really, really terrible. So let's talk about her mother and then Carrie before we talk Super Star Wars. Let's briefly mention, a lot of people don't realize how important Debbie Reynolds was to a lot of our childhoods.
Debbie Reynolds being Carrie Fisher's mother.
Yes,
in case
Carrie Fisher's mother. In case
anyone doesn't make that connection.
In case you didn't catch that in the news. So what were some of the movies that she was in that you remember as a child?
Well, I didn't actually know this until today when I looked it up, but she was apparently the voice of Charlotte in the animated Charlotte's Web, which is interesting because that was a movie I saw several times as a child, and I think, well, it was anyway, I believe it was very regular reading in childhood classrooms, the actual book.
Yeah. And I mean, especially if you grew up in like not rich schools during the 80s and the 90s, then I mean, if you had any like movie days, that was probably...
It was pretty much Charlotte's Web, yeah.
it was Charlotte's Web and what's that movie with the dog that everybody cries and falls in?
The dog, oh yeah, what's that called?
I can't think of it.
The little tiny dog that has no business doing sled racing, but did a dog sled race.
No. I was thinking of older than that.
Oh, jeez, I don't know.
It was a golden retriever. What was the stupid dog's name? Old Yeller. Between Charlotte's Web and Old Yeller, for some odd reason that my school continually played, the first school I went to, because I've gone to several, was unfortunately, like, I kept thinking, do they just not want us to have pets, like, ever? Is that what they're, like, ingraining into our psyche? It's like, hey, all your pets that you love, they're all gonna die.
Charlotte's Web disturbed me even as a child, and as an adult looking back, it's actually, there's a lot of movies that could fall into this category, actually, where you have animals living in a world that is basically our real world, where we kill and eat animals and such, but they're sentient.
Yeah. No, and
this pig has to prove himself so he doesn't get sent to the butcher shop. Like, what a screwed up concept when you really sit back and think about it. This pig, everything is riding on this pig being a show pig, so he doesn't end up being slaughtered for dinner. We're getting way off topic here, but yeah, anyway.
But at any rate, Debbie Reynolds, huge. Now, you mentioned that one. I remember seeing her in The Love Boat, and in she was in Mary Mary. She was in The Singing Nun. She was in How Sweet It Is. She was in The Rat Race. The Rat Race, not the more recent one with Rowan Atkinson, which was a hilarious movie. That movie is so funny. the original Rat Race, which was not as funny. It was in some cases way more ludicrous, but I guess that makes it more actually like a rat race. And then of course and you probably saw scenes of this on the news, was Singing in the Rain, and a bunch of these old movies from the 50s and the 60s that no, I didn't watch when they came out, but you know, I watched because I'm like that. So yeah, so she's been a long time like steady main actress in Hollywood, and she's done recently. I mean, she was in of course Family Guy, but I mean, who hasn't been? But she was in Kim Possible and a bunch of other animated movies like the Rugrats, the TV series. But Carrie Fisher, I can't say enough how influential she was as an icon growing up, just in those 3 movies. Like, she killed not Boba Fett. She killed Jabba the Hutt, and that scene, when I first watched it, I was pretty young. First of all, I don't think like normal people, so yes, I did notice the dress, but the other thing I noticed was like, my goodness, she killed the bad guy. How many times have you seen it, like at that point? The
damsel in distress, the princess that's been captured.
Princess captured, you know, she turned the table by using everything that the Jabba had given her as a weapon against him. And I mean, people have, you know, picked this apart for decades, but the concept of, you know, a woman doing that in a role, I think is brilliant, and it's really important to have had that growing up, because it made the way for a lot of like these stronger female archetypes, which we'll discuss the whole female archetype thing here briefly.
Well, I've been thinking about a lot about what you've been saying actually in the days since Carrie Fisher's death, and it struck me, it hit me hard actually, finding out that she had passed away after her heart attack. And celebrity deaths, they make me feel down, but they don't, like, especially if it's somebody I'm familiar with and have enjoyed, you know, the stuff they've been in, but Carrie Fisher hit me hard, and I was thinking about, like, why did it, like, it ruined my day, like, and that doesn't usually happen, and part of it is because she was, you know, so much younger than you ever want. You know, 60 is far too young for somebody to be you know,
well,
dying.
And a sadder thing is when any parent outlives their child, that's not a good thing. That's not anything anybody wants to live through, period, ever.
Not ever. And that is very sad. And it's also, I mean, that family just I mean, they got hit so hard twice then, because it was the next day that Carrie Fisher's mother then went into the hospital having had a stroke. And so that it's more tragedy than anyone deserves in a lifetime, let alone in a single, like, weekend or whatever it was. But anyway, so Carrie Fisher's death really hit me hard, and I think it's primarily because Star Wars was such a huge part of my childhood. You know, I was the non-athletic sort of geeky kid, as I'm sure nobody listening is surprised at all. I loved Star Wars. I just freaking loved Star Wars. Every single Saturday, I would watch one of the Star Wars movies. We had them on VHS. And I just loved it so much. And Princess Leia was one of my favorite characters. And I think she really defied, you know, sort of the stereotypical damsel in distress princess captured by the monster kind of thing. She was a kind-hearted and passionate person, but really had an inner strength that led her to, you know, do the right thing and stand up to these menacing bad guys who were just frightening. Like, she got right in Vader's face and was like, what the hell do you think you're doing, boy? Like, and Tarkin, who for some reason could boss Vader around. Just something about her character just was so awesome. And yeah, like you were saying, when she's Jabba the Hutt's slave, and you know, she uses the chain that she is, you know, tethered to him with to strangle him to death, and then, you know, to escape. And, you know, she really took responsibility for her own escape. She didn't just sit around waiting to be rescued. That princess was such an awesome character, and I wouldn't have thought of her as my favorite character when I was a kid. You know, I was all about the Han Solo, you know, shooting guys, and Luke doing the lightsaber thing. But I think looking back, Princess Leia was the character that I liked the most and was really the heart of that story for me. And I think there was a lot to like about Carrie Fisher in real life. Like, I read an interview that she had done about, somebody asked her, because I guess there was some controversy about should they, Disney's been, owning LucasArts now. Should they be producing Princess Leia toys in that metal bikini thing?
Yeah.
And there was some controversy about that, and she was like, well, that's stupid. And then Riri was like, oh, I think he was pretty surprised. He was like, really? Like, you think this is okay? She's like, what should people tell their kids about why you're wearing this outfit? She's like, tell them I was kidnapped by a freaking space slug and he made me wear it. And when I was free, I took it off. Like,
I'm really disappointed in Disney that they haven't stood up, and I really hope that they will make more Princess Leia toys, because they have been really, really, really not making very many of them. Even some of the latest movie stuff. There's all. We won't go into it, but there's a couple of hashtags out there, for where's Leia, where's Rey even, and those are very deserving questions that Disney needs to answer.
Another thing that I think is very noteworthy and very honorable about Carrie Fisher, and that a lot of people have been praising her for, was her openness about her own struggles in life. Her struggles with drugs, her struggles with mental illness. Things that a lot of celebrities, it would seem, would like to hide behind a facade.
Yeah. I mean, celebrities like to hide from it, but they also are a little bit more susceptible to it, because they have a huge amount of disposable income. And a lot of actors have, it's almost like a predisposition to get, trapped into some pretty hard drugs and alcohol. And we've seen a lot of actors go before their time because of those things. So let's not pretend that it's not a problem. It is a problem. And what you're saying and what Carrie did was, instead of hiding it, instead of trying to build a mask for themselves, she talked about it openly and communicated it to try and both help her and then other people who were also dealing with the same thing. So it's really, what she did was really amazing, and she should be credited with that immensely.
And so for that reason, she is probably the Star Wars actor I would most like to have met, and that is a bittersweet statement, because we almost got to meet her.
We did meet her in the sense that we were about 4 feet away from her.
We met her in the sense of, like, ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
That don't know each other's there. We saw her dog.
We saw her dog, and what we didn't realize is that she had walked right past us, like right past us, and I was looking at something else, and you were
I was looking at the dog. I was like, hey.
Yeah, and naturally we saw her, as everybody else did in the lineup, obviously.
So from a distance, there's the big lineup for autographs, which was like, it was like $85 or something to get her autograph.
Yeah.
It was
a big long lineup, and I sat there and I smiled. I was like, hey, look, it's Carrie Fisher, but the fact that we had literally walked right past her and then spoken to this artist that she had spoken to and bought something from moments before, as we were going up to talk to them.
That was the worst. That was the worst. Yes, because we were at this artist's booth and the artist wasn't there, and so we were like, okay, well, we'll come back in a few minutes, because his girlfriend or wife was there and said, yeah, he'll be back in about 5 minutes. So we left for a few minutes, came back. The artist is there now. He's like,
yeah,
man, Carrie Fisher just bought some of my shirts. We were like, she was freaking here,
because she wasn't. Of course, this was the day before she was scheduled to show up at the event, and she was incognito, and that's really funny. Anyways,
so we've lost somebody wonderful. It's very
one of my all-time favorite Star Wars actors all time in that title. She's definitely my rank 1.
Leia's not done though. She, before her passing, she filmed her scenes for episode 8.
For the next one. Yeah.
So she'll be there in episode 8. And if you've seen Rogue One, by the way, okay, before we talk about Rogue One, let's just put a spoiler warning right here. Just let you know the rest of this podcast, we're going to be discussing Rogue One and sort of the future of Star Wars, and we're going to be talking about aspects of Rogue One.
So if you haven't seen it and you don't want the whole plot spoiled, and it's
put this in your watch later playlist until you've seen Rogue One, which, by the way, if you haven't seen Rogue One, go and freaking see Rogue One right now.
So yeah, Rogue One.
It was a different kind of Star Wars movie. I'll just start with that. It was...
they said it was a different kind, so there was no title crawl, which kind of sucks because the title crawls, I think, are a very good thing to have, and I think that they should keep them in because one of the things you can do is you can set the date and time very clearly at the beginning. It doesn't have to be a really long title crawl, but I really think they missed out on it. Almost all of the games have had title crawls, so I know Disney doesn't like the whole gaming side of LucasArts and Star Wars. Suck it up, Disney. Really get over the fact that you own a story and a universe in which people kill each other a lot with big laser guns and ships. Like, just get over it.
They don't shy away from that in the movies, though. In the movies that have come out since Disney's acquisition.
They don't. Just everything else that they do, like the toys, the games, the marketing, all that kind of stuff. It's like, hey, you know what? And again, major spoiler alert for The Force Awakens.
It's a year old. Disney, it's on Netflix. Go watch it, people.
Yeah, Disney is so bizarre in that they'll kill Han Solo brutally on film, close up. Then, they'll kill off an entire solar system of people, and then another planet on which the Empire is based on. They'll kill everybody. Just mass genocide. It's just piles and piles of genocide. Just piles and piles of genocide. But then you make a video game where you play a trooper and you shoot somebody and they're like, I don't know, guys, can we do it? Like, is this really what we want, to be, in our branding? Should we really show stormtroopers killing innocent villagers? I don't know if we should do that. And you're just sitting there going, Disney, come on, grow a pair. I mean, we're telling a story in which bad people do bad things. And the point of this story is to give you hope that, it doesn't matter how dark things are currently, things can always get better if people stand up and do the right thing. For the movie itself, let's talk about it and the source material for this particular movie. Obviously, the source material being the very first 3 movies.
You're talking about episodes 4 through 6.
Yes, okay. and the whole how did they get the plans to the Death Star? Because that seems like a pretty important part of the story. And people often thought that episodes 1, 2, and 3 were going to be about that. We're going to be about the stuff leading up to that. They're not necessarily about Darth Vader's childhood. Now the guy Gareth Edwards, who directed Rogue One, he is a big fan of the video games, but apparently he's not a big enough a fan of the video games to actually use the characters from the original video games. I don't know if he was forced or if he decided that it would be better to have these other characters' names. So here's the story originally. The original story in the games and in the lore that happened before Disney bought out LucasArts was that there's this game called Dark Forces, and the story called Dark Forces, and it's about this guy named Kyle Katarn, used to be an Imperial soldier, commando, high-grade stuff, all kinds of really high intense training, and he was one of the best soldiers. Anyways, he gets pissed off at the Empire, and he leaves the Empire, and he becomes a bounty hunter, essentially. They hire him because they need his expertise to get the plans once they find out about them. So they find out about the plans, and so Kyle Katarn is his name. He goes and he goes to get them, but before he goes on the mission, he wants this one girl named Jan Ors to come along with him and be his running companion throughout the series. Now, these two characters go on to have this amazing story. Multiple games, multiple books written about them. They're one of the...
Avid gamers will recognize you're talking about the protagonists of the Jedi Knight series, or the Dark Forces.
The Dark Forces was the precursor to the Jedi Knight series.
Yeah.
So again, we have this... I always looked at Jan Ors and Kyle Katarn as one of my favorite couples, quote-unquote couples, from the Star Wars universe. So Gareth Edwards, being the fan that he is, I don't know, again, if he was forced to change the original content or whether he did it for whatever reason. But originally where these two go off and they are major players in content in the Star Wars universe after
Jedi Knight series continues till well after the events of Return of the Jedi. They were, you know, eventually, like, Katarn meets Luke and is like a Jedi in Jedi Academy. Kyle Katarn is a trainer at the Academy, where Luke is there as well, and stuff like that. So it's like spans.
So we're not gonna go too far into it, but it really is a great story. And if you are a gamer and you have never ever played Dark Forces and the Jedi Knight series, I highly recommend it. Now he did take the Dark Troopers from it, so there were Dark Troopers in Dark Forces, and they made it over to the movie. So there's a lot of parallels, even just looking at
an
enormous amount of parallels.
The protagonist's name, Jyn Erso.
Yeah,
from Jan Ors. There's, I mean, that just seems too close to be coincidental.
There's this one picture that they have in like the early, like, this was like, you know, 32-bit gameplay, or not gameplay, game video that they used to make, where you get Kyle Katarn talking to Mon Mothma, and you take that picture and you cross it over with the same scene where he's sitting a few feet away from Mon Mothma in the same control room, and he's talking to her. He's wearing almost the exact same like jacket, and he's got very similar, you know, cut facial hair, and he there's no question in my mind that they are the same people. But instead of this wonderfully long relationship and story, he kills them all off at the end of Rogue One, and that was very disappointing. It was very disappointing that Disney, in the first like solo movie, was like, hey, all these characters, we're just gonna kill them all. Every single one of them that you grew to like, we murdered them all.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a counterpoint on that because I didn't mind that. I thought it was powerful. I thought it was effective.
The movie as a whole, I very much enjoyed, and I thought, to me, it says that at least now they're starting to head in the right direction. Some people were like, they moved between too many planets. Well, you know what was wrong with The Force Awakens is they didn't move, and they didn't include enough planets. In The Force Awakens, it seemed that the only solar systems that were involved in this conflict was this one planet where all the Imperials were from and on, and these couple other planets of this new republic that they had set up that was, you know, separate from the galactic community as a whole, and that this was like a tiny little fight between them, and that was it. Mm-hmm. That was the whole of the story. That weapon still drives me mental. The planet killer, like my goodness, it's just it's dumb. It's dumb. It's dumb. You want a good villain? Look at BioWare. Disney, please look at BioWare. And a lot of people didn't like the second version of Knights of the Old Republic, but it did have one of the best villains in it. Actually, it had 3 amazing villains. But one of the best villains was this guy who looks at a planet and he uses the Force to kill every living thing on the planet. You want a new planet killing bad guy story set up? Use that. For crying out loud, please use that. Stop making... What are we going to have next? A Dyson sphere? That's going to be the next weapon that the Empire creates. Is a Dyson sphere. It's a sphere built around an entire solar system. That's what it is. That's what they're going to blow it up with. And there's going to be no explanation as to any of that tech or where the materials came from or anything like that. No, we're done with logic completely at this point in the Star Wars story. Apparently.
Okay, I mean it. Force Awakens was a little weak in the way that it paralleled A New Hope so closely. Yeah, but I mean, a planet-destroying machine, you know, even the Death Star, you've left logic and physics back in the dust, you know, to begin with. And that's kind of what Star Wars is about, though. It's about these absurdly huge machines, and it's about these characters and these bad guys that just go over the top, and everything's just massive. And sometimes it's just massive for no reason.
It's massive for no reason, but they don't even utilize the massiveness in a proper way. Like, okay, here's the one scene, right, in The Force Awakens, where Han and Chewie take the Millennium Falcon, which is not a pristine piece of technology, period. It's not a pristine
It's an old ship at that point.
It's an old ship that apparently has a lot of problems with pinpoint flying at the moment because it hasn't been fully repaired and upgraded yet, right? So there's that principle. So what do they do when they're hyperspacing into the shield? What are they doing? Well, they take this. Besides, I do need to mention this. The whole planetary shields. Can we just be done with that? Also, it's getting a little irritating. They're starting to write themselves into a hole with all this stuff that they keep on doing. Anyways, so speaking of this, instead of having Han and Chewie, because you remember how the planet was, right? In The Force Awakens, how they had basically split the planet in half and had created this gigantic chasm that was between, it's one half and the other half, so they could put all this tech and the whole laser firing thing and all that kind of stuff. They put that all inside this thing. So here you have the Millennium Falcon that needs to warp in at a precise place and stop before it crashes into the face of the planet. And instead of saying, oh, the warp in to where the planet has been cut, so your distance of stop time is literally the length of the entire planet. So they could slow down and stop within that whole period. It's a design flaw in the shield. You can warp in and you'll be like right inside the main area, and all you have to do is whip around up top into the mountain ranges and then go to wherever they need to go.
You have spent way too much time thinking about this.
Yeah, I know I spend way too much time, but this is my job to spend way too much time thinking about.
Well, I mean, the thing is, though, like, if you're dropping out of faster than light travel, which is impossible anyway.
Yeah.
In the Star Wars universe, it's possible. So if you're faster than light, if you're traveling faster than light, even the width of an entire planet is a pretty narrow stopping space. So that doesn't bother me. Plus, there's all kinds of tech and stuff inside that they might have crashed into. I don't know. I just don't think it's worth asking these kinds of questions. Star Wars is just supposed to be... It's a fantasy world, is what it is. It's a story about magical space wizards who fight with swords made of light. Like...
I know.
You're sitting here thinking about, like, it's so illogical that they were trying to stop in this little distance.
I'm just saying that when there's an opportunity to make use of something to make it more explainable, Disney, please use that instead of just saying more magic.
I would rather they spend more time on character development. And this is let's get back onto Rogue One here. My biggest, and Rogue One, I loved Rogue One. The second it was over, I wanted to watch it again. My big beef with it is I really didn't, by the end of the movie, I didn't care all that much about the main protagonists, like the two characters we were just talking about, Jyn Erso and
I can't remember his name.
The pilot guy, hang on, I've got it here, Cassian Andor.
Cassian. Every time I hear Cassian, I think, why the hell didn't they call him Kyle or Katarn or something?
Well, that probably would have been too obvious. Like, by the way, Mads Mikkelsen as Jin's father, I thought he was fantastic, and of course Alan Tudyk as K2SO. Wow, he was hilarious.
I really did like him. Yes.
And my big beef with not Force Awakens, a little bit with Force Awakens, but with Rogue One, is the characters felt really thin. Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor felt very two-dimensional. There were a few characters that felt a lot more three-dimensional, but they were more secondary characters. And I think of Saw Gerrera, I would love to have learned more about him. That's Forrest Whitaker's character, who sort of had some of that Darth Vader-esque kind of tech on him because of his injuries from the war or whatever, and how he's sort of this extremist rebel. I would love to have learned more about him, but then he just sort of dies in the first act or partway through the second act. But yeah, the Jyn Erso felt very two-dimensional, and her character seemed to switch. Partway through the movie, her character just kind of completely changed. She started off as sort of this closed-off, criminal type. It seems like they, and I'm pretty sure when you go back and watch, the original trailers that came out, there's a bunch of scenes in them that are not in the movie. And so there's a lot of evidence of sort of it going through late stage rewrites.
I would love to get my hands on the original direction of the story and the original everything. I would love to see what was originally designed, and I think, and I'm afraid of what we'll find, and I'm afraid that we will find that it was a better movie, but they changed things so that Disney had a better handle on it going forward. That's what I'm afraid that we would find if we did get that, oh hey, it was actually, you know, even more cooler and even better than the version that came out. But yeah, it turns out that Disney just wanted to can, you know, they wanted to can the ability for them to make, you know, new movies with these same characters, because they're very adamant that these are one-shot titles, guys, one-shot titles. And I'm afraid that our next one-shot title we're going to see is pretty much everybody in it except for the main character is going to be dead again. Just a heads up. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. So we're gonna deal with it at least once more, and then they're going to surprise us with a third one. Now these are the standalones. I'm not talking about the actual
the new trilogy, the new main series trilogy. Yeah. Well, we'll have to see where it goes, because I think despite that, I mean, despite not really connecting with the main character, I thought Rogue One was still a fascinating story, especially when it got into the whole thing with the rebels actually getting in there and rebelling, and doing this thing, putting everything on the line to capture these plans to, you know, for the Death Star, and seeing some of the rebel pilots from A New Hope flying on this mission with them, that was just awesome. And I guess they used unused footage from New Hope to make that happen. I was like, how the hell did they do that? But that was fantastic. And let's talk about CG characters for a minute, because obviously, well, not obvious if you haven't seen it, but hopefully if you haven't seen it, you're watching it instead of listening to this. But Tarkin. So let's talk about Grand Moff Tarkin. So have we reached an age in movie making where an actor dying is no longer the end of their career?
Yes, this is going to be a thing. Part of the thing and part of the reasoning behind it is that some of these people signed over their digital rights to digital stand-in tech.
Sign over their likeness kind of thing.
Yeah. Some of them have done it without understanding the concept behind it, especially the guy who played Grand Moff Tarkin. He was essentially like, they paid for a voice guy, and that was about it. So, and
then they just animated.
Yeah.
Well, they would have had a stand-in. They would have had a stand-in doing the motion capture.
Yeah, and we're gonna see this. We're gonna see this more and more and more. Not just from Disney, from a lot of things going forward. This technology is like a gold mine. First of all, it allows everybody to believe that nobody ever dies, and that's a very enthralling concept for hardcore fans of some things. You know, the fact that they can, you know, that in 10 years when they perfect the technology in a 3D environment on a stage, if that's a thing in 10 years, you could go see Elvis sing again. You could go see a whole show from Michael Jackson again, because you can see him. He's right there. He's more lifelike than you ever were able to see him before. And this is a gold mine, because when certain of these companies, and the Actors Guild will eventually get around to fighting this when they realize, you know, how much it puts them at a disadvantage. They will get around to fighting this eventually, but right now they're like, oh yeah, because it's more money in our pockets. They think, and in the short term, it is more money in their pockets. It means they do get an additional check for additional things, but down the road, when there's new blood trying to break in, you're going to find that this is going to become a very difficult thing. So, yes, this technology is definitely here to stay. For all those who were horrified at the I think it was the 3-second mark and the 7-second mark of Princess Leia at the end there, and then Tarkin, he was a little bit better. There's 1 or 2 bits of him where he started to, like, he was not real.
It was his mannerisms I found more so than anything. Like, yeah. As far in appearance, at first I did not realize that it was a CG character. Now my friend who I saw the movie with could tell immediately, and but he works in that stuff. He produces digital CG graphics and stuff, so I don't know if that had something to do with it, but I just what gave it away that it wasn't quite right was he just seemed a little twitchy to me. Like, Just some random movements that just didn't seem quite human.
Like I said, it's a growing technology. The good news is that if you were to watch, Angelina Jolie did a movie with Anthony Hopkins and a couple other people, where it was the same thing. It was entirely CG, and it had
Beowulf.
Beowulf, yeah. So Beowulf, it was all CG, and it was all like, professionally ripped off of the people's faces and all this kind of stuff, and they're like, this is the future of technology, and everybody's like, I'm never going to see a movie like that again. Well, it was, a lot of people found it really terrible, but what they didn't realize is that same technology has now gotten into the Star Wars universe, and we're going to see more of it, 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 until eventually certain actors will just be essentially replaced by their digital alter egos, and they'll be sitting in a sound room doing voiceover stuff for as long as they basically live, I guess.
Or they'll find a voice sound alike.
Basically, yes, this technology is here to stay, and unfortunately, you might not like where it's headed, but the good news is it's going to get better. Bad news is eventually at some point we're going to have to fight it. Like, if we don't want to keep watching the same, top 50 A-list celebrities be digitally copied in movies going forward endlessly, that Disney happens, or Paramount, or whoever has an unlimited usage of their persons on, then yeah, but all in all, I thought the movie was, I would definitely give it a definite pass. I would say that it's definitely a good direction. I hope that Disney continues to treat this whole universe with respect. I hope they start to listen to the fans more. I hope they start to realize that having a connected universe is a good thing, that they don't need just one family in this universe, that they can actually have more. They can actually do more with it than just what they've been doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I really loved about Rogue One was you got to see things that you've never seen before in a Star Wars movie. You got to see aspects of the universe.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was this the first tropical planet that we've seen in the Star Wars movies? I seem to think it is.
I think it was, unless, it's possible we might have seen one in the prequels that I'm not thinking of, but it was definitely one of the first that was palm trees and beaches kind of thing.
Yeah. The palm trees and beaches was a nice touch. I was like, hey, cool.
And not just another freaking desert planet.
Rock and lava and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't do, oh, look, it's another freaking desert planet again. You got to, so yeah, exactly, but you got to see things that were different. You got to see, this tropical planet. I also think of that early on scene where you're in this really, really, really crowded marketplace, and it feels so claustrophobic, and there's just people bustling everywhere, and stormtroopers walking through, and just really got a feel for what would it have felt like to live under Imperial dominion. You haven't really seen that before. You've seen the rebels fighting the Empire, but you didn't really get to see what the Empire's occupation of all these planets really looked like or felt like. So there's just a bunch of things like that just you didn't see this kind of thing before.
Yeah, that's true.
And the lack of opening crawl at the beginning, a lot of people had issues with that. I really didn't.
You don't necessarily have to miss it, but at the same time, it's why not?
Well, I kind of think it might have been to keep the movie from being too formulaic, and I think that with Force Awakens, I enjoyed it at the beginning of Force Awakens because it was okay, here we go, this is a Star Wars movie.
Yes.
But now that we're sort of past that, and I won't mind at all if they do that for Episode 8 and Episode 9, which I'm sure they will, but the good storytelling and good filmmaking is about showing it without just telling your audience what's happening. You got a sense. I thought the opening scenes were very, very well done in the sense that you were able to figure out what was going on without a lick of narration and without having to read. And essentially, the title crawl is just narration in disguise. I hate to put it in those terms, but it's essentially saying, okay, here's where we are, instead of showing you where we are and what's going on. Now, I'm not disparaging the title crawl. I think they're an excellent aspect, and it's a very iconic thing in all of the Star Wars movies thus far. But the fact that they did without it, and the fact that they were able to introduce the story without it, I thought was effective filmmaking. So, I did not mind it at all. But of course, I would miss it if it was missing from one of the sort of main storyline movies, like one of the trilogy movies. The next spin-off being a Han Solo origin movie. And so, by the way, there's at least 2 characters that will come out alive, because we know Lando's been cast for that one as well. But
okay, so then, well, technically that'll be 3 then. But I mean,
3. Well, anyway, like, what would they put in the title crawl for that? Like, once upon a time, there was this dude named Han Solo, and blah blah blah. Well, you know what? Just that's one where it's like, I'd be okay with you just getting to the movie, you know.
Well, in that case, and what I mean is I think that they should, you know, basically give time, like, so that people can start to get used to, like, reading the time period that the movie's in. Because, I mean, we are flipping kind of all over the book here right now. Like, I mean, we're kind of going all over the place as far as, like, the time frame of the movies.
Yeah, anyway, I mean, so much we could talk about, obviously.
Yeah,
people...
we don't often talk about movies a whole lot. We aren't necessarily, but I mean, this is pretty big. Star Wars is a pretty big part of our growing up, and
it's important. I mean, it's a big part of our childhoods, and it's a huge thing in pop culture. Like, it's hard to think of a franchise that has affected, you know, just the common mindset of people, or that's as ingrained in the public consciousness as Star Wars. Like, even people who have never seen the movies, like, my friend started dating a girl who had never seen any of the Star Wars movies. Even she knew that Darth Vader was Luke's father.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to miss out on some of that stuff.
And so there's just, it's invaded our culture, it's influenced pop culture to such a huge extent. I think there's a lot of different opinions about what people think a Star Wars movie should be, and so nothing that, I don't think any of the movies that come out are going to be perfect. Not everybody's going to be happy with them, but I've really liked the ones that have come out so far. I'm so glad that Star Wars is now in the hands of people who are doing a really good job, and I hope to see the same. I hope to see the same in upcoming Star Wars games. I would love to see, if not a continuation of the Dark Forces / Jedi Knight series, I would love to see something like that in the near future, or perhaps some kind of an open world like Mass Effect kind of a deal. That would be really nice too.
An open world game for Star Wars is coming. It is a natural progression of video gaming. It will be coming eventually. I know a lot of people are pitching things nonstop to Disney. Eventually they'll have to say yes to something because the fans will just demand it. So, and they are starting to listen to fans. So it's getting there. It's getting there.
Awesome. And we'll be there to cover it when it comes out.
So that's our thoughts on the Star Wars universe as is so far. Thanks for listening, and thank you for a wonderful 2016.
May the Force be with you.